Gardeners know the value of good compost. When I'm giving a little talk to gardeners and I ask who has a compost pile, why almost everybody raises their hand. But how do we know when the compost is ready to use? Let's look at some compost piles. The composting process requires heat and moisture. Now, a lot of people call compost this stuff that they find in their kitchens. This is a vegetable scraps from my kitchen. Tomatoes, onions, eggshells. This is not compost. This is vegetable scraps that can become compost, but we'll have to add them to some manure and hay and green chop and things like that to make the compost. I use a more traditional method of dealing with my kitchen scraps. I feed them to our pig or our chickens. An easy way for the home gardener to deal with vegetable scraps is just have a trench alongside of your garden and put the vegetable scraps in it every day and kick a little soil over it. At the end of the year, you'll have better soil there. We can recognize 3 distinct phases in the composting process. In this compost pile that was made a few months ago, we can still see pieces of the manure and the hay. It hasn't really changed a whole lot. It's starting to break down and starting to its process, but this is what I would call a phase 1 compost. This pile here is what I would consider a phase 2 composting. It was made about 5 or 6 months ago and has been turned 1 time. This compost still has visible hay and manure, but it's lost that smell and is starting to break down into something that resembles good compost. Now, if I needed it, I would use this in crops that were heavy feeders, like sweet corn or maybe some winter squash. Here we have a pile of compost that's ready to use. All traces of the original materials are gone and everything is crumbly and falls apart at the slightest touch. Good compost has a earthy, woodsy smell to it. And besides the breakdown process, there's also been a building up process of humus formation. We're trying to enliven the soil with a humus. So when this is put onto our gardens, a lot of the microbes in here will go out into the garden and incorporate this really quickly. So as the compost breaks down, there's also a building up process as microbes move in and earthworms digest some of it, and it becomes not something that's just completely broke down, but an enlivening process has happened with live beings that create humus. And once we have humus, we have the foundations for really good soil. Another test is how the compost responds when we put it onto the garden soil. A mature compost, along with minerals and the good tilth and cover crops, creates a live humus that really wants to become vegetation. When we keep the weeds out and plant our seeds, this soil is going to grow something no matter what. Good gardening is a combination of a lot of things. When we use mature compost and get our soils in good shape and have a little luck, we're going to have bountiful bowls of quality produce.
For inspiring garden tours, growing tips, and garden projects, visit our website at volunteergardener.org or on YouTube at the Volunteer Gardener channel and like us on Facebook.